Welcome to The Road to Innovation, powered by the Kleinert Foundation. On each episode, we delve into innovative solutions to society's most pressing issues like sex trafficking, homelessness, and poverty. We hope that with each conversation, you'll be inspired to take actionable steps towards social change. Here's your host, Hannah Rabelais from the Kleinert Foundation.
Welcome to the Road to Innovation podcast, powered by the Kleinert Foundation. I am your host, Hannah Rabelais, and today we have a special guest, Miss Lori Cousino, and she is a fourth grade teacher at the Wesley Prep School here in Dallas, Texas. Welcome to the show, Lori.
Thank you so much. I'm so honored to be here.
Thank you for your time. Well, I'm just so excited to share with our listeners kind of your background and how you started the Common Ground experiment. So you can just kick us off, because you've been a teacher for 30 years now, yes, and 15 years actually at Wesley Prep. So please tell our listeners more about you.
Okay, well, great. Well, so yes, I've been a teacher 30 years, and I started off teaching kindergarten and then moved up to second grade and kind of found my sweet spot in fourth grade when we moved here to Dallas in '99. I taught at University Park for a little while, and then when my son started kindergarten, I wanted us to be at the same school, and there was an opening at Wesley Prep, and that was just the best move for me professionally and also for our family. Both of my kids went to school there from preschool on through sixth grade.
Oh, wow.
And then I have loved teaching there from day one for many reasons, but I think I would never get to do projects like the Common Ground experiment in another setting, I don't think. Mm-hmm. And it's a Christian school, and so I get to talk about, the wonder of God's creation, and we get to look at how we relate with each other from that perspective, and which I really enjoy. So I've always wanted to do some sort of outreach project with my students every year, but really in 2016, during the presidential race, everything felt angry and polarized, yes, and divided, and so much so that I normally have my students kind of journal during the debates and write down their points of view and follow things, and it just got so it just really wasn't a kid-friendly race.
Yeah, it's really nasty.
And so I got to thinking about that, and I'm like, what's happening to our world? How I kept thinking, this needs to change, and then I thought, well, my biggest circle of influence is every day in my classroom. Mm-hmm. And so I started thinking, well, what could I do with my time with my students to show them something different? And that's kind of where the seed was planted for Common Ground experiment. We also watch TED Talks every Tuesday in my classroom, and I started realizing on TED Talk Tuesdays that 10-year-olds are profound. Mm-hmm. So they're kind of developmentally, they're still in that whimsical, yes, childhood place, but they're starting to think abstractly and deeply about things and think about their identity, not the world, not from an egocentric point of view, but where do I fit in the big picture and who do I want to become? And it's a really great time developmentally to start helping them see that they can interact with people from all walks of life and they can make change starting now. And so some of our TED Talk conversations really kind of kept me thinking about what we could do. And then the other thing is, I think I've noticed over the years that kids' attention spans are shortening,
yes,
and their ability to communicate and look people in the eye and just be curious about other people, it's changing because of that. And I'm like, we can't lose that part of our humanity. And so just providing opportunities for kids to connect with people and have conversations. And so there were all of these things swirling around in my mind. And then we had Daniel Roby, who is the CEO of I guess it's CEO of
Yeah,
Austin
he's
Street
CEO,
Center.
yes.
And he was actually, incidentally, my husband is a youth minister, and he was one of his youth
Oh, small world.
when we first
wow.
moved here. And Daniel is great.
He's incredible, yes.
Even as a high school kid, he was helping people experience homelessness. I mean,
Wow.
he was making extra food and bringing clothes from his own closet to help people on his way to school. Like,
Yeah.
it's been in his heart for a long time. But anyway, so he came and talked to my students and a little bit about Austin Street. And then we decided that we wanted to host a Christmas party there. So I wanted my kids to, because when Daniel came, I'm all over the map here,
you're
sorry.
fine. No, you're
But
good.
when Daniel came, I noticed there was a disconnect. Like, my kids had this kind of arm's length understanding of homelessness.
What do you think that was?
Well, I just think, for when I think their age, and probably their parents want to shield them from
Yes.
certain things, and I get that. I mean, you don't want your kids to see the hard parts of life when they're young. And then there were just some kind of stereotype that I could hear them saying things that probably they've heard maybe their parents say about someone who might be experiencing homelessness and why that might be. And Daniel really kind of opened their eyes to a different point of view. And I thought, well, the real thing that would change things is when they get to meet someone. And so we hosted a lunch. We served lunch, but I didn't want it to just be serving lunch, so we did a Christmas party. And beforehand, we did a lot of prep. Like, I showed them some pictures of the shelter. It's kind of a stark environment if you've never been.
Yes.
And we did some conversation starter. We talked about, like, what are some ways you could strike up a conversation with someone new. And I said, and if you're shy or nervous, bring a friend with you. But I don't want it to be a table of fourth graders and a table of people who are guests at Austin Street. I want us to be intermingled and learn some new things about each other. And those kids, that day is really what changed things for me, because I watched with tears in my eyes the whole time. We made a cookie decorating station, and we had a Christmas card station with stamps and a photo booth, and we did Christmas carols and games and stuff, and just different places to interact. And I noticed a lot of things. I noticed, first of all, Austin Street is a shelter. There are not children at the shelter. And so being around children, I think, brought a bright spot to some of their guests at Austin Street, some of their days. And they would hearken back to their childhood and started telling stories about, when they were on the football team in high school, or what shows they watched when they were kids. They were just connecting. I noticed at the cookie decorating station that people would stay for a long time making a beautiful work of art on their cookie. Wow. And it was like just a little escape from the tough part of the tough day that they're experiencing. Yes. And and the kids just jumped right in. The people who were standing around the edges were the grown-ups.
Really?
And I think it's because we are so cautious. We don't want to offend. We don't want to overstep. Where kids just lean in and connect naturally. And so I watched that happening, and it was just beautiful. And I'm like, we could learn something from these kids and the way they are connecting right now, because this is the way we should all connect. Yes. And so I've read, there's a book by a professor from Columbia, Lisa Miller. It's called The Spiritual Child. And I read a section from that book where she talks about this concept of unitive empathy, and that children, when they're young, have this sense of connection with everything and in nature and everyone. They don't kind of assess someone's worth based on what they do or where they come from or what they believe, and that's something we learn as we grow. And I just thought, well, that's something we need to keep. We need to help nurture that unitive empathy in kids, and we need to harken back to those days ourselves and learn how to connect, and that our identity is that we are children of God, and that is enough to give people honor and respect and be curious about their lives and learn their stories. And kids kind of do that naturally. And so I was just thinking if there was a way to nurture that, and what does it look like in 4th grade and 5th grade and 6th grade to kind of give kids opportunities to keep that going. And would they grow into adults who then see the world through that lens? And then there's not bubbles and margins in our communities, and there's, people living together in a more integrated way. I thought, I mean, it's a big pipe dream, but I wonder, I wonder let's see if this can happen. That's why we call it the Common Ground Experiment. So
beautiful.
All that, yes. So we, let me make sure. Yeah.
So what were the two, because we're mainly talking about Our Common Table today, which was two different organizations, but what are the two experiments that you did with Austin Street in their sisterhood program?
Yes. So after that day with the Christmas party, we came back and my kids one little girl right on the bus on the way back, she goes, "Can we do our Valentine's Day party here too?"
Oh.
And I was like, "Yes." And we set that up and we planned it. And then at the Valentine's party is where we learned of the group, the Sisterhood. So that's a group of ladies who are kind of working towards getting back on their feet and they're in the shelter, but they have kind of their own section of the shelter. Yes. And they are taking classes and they are working to better themselves. They have to be clean of addiction. And so in a sense, it's kind of a vetted group of shelter guests that I thought that would be a good group to work with. And so I asked Lacey, who was at the time the volunteer coordinator, if she could connect me with the Sisterhood and would they consider doing a project like this. And they said yes. And so we met with the lady. Well, I went the first time just to talk with the ladies and see what they thought. And I brought notes from my kids and, asked them what they thought about writing poetry with us. And I still remember there was one lady who was, her name's Monica, and she happened to be, she's now one of my dear friends, but she was the leader of this sisterhood, but she was sitting back at a table and she was just kind of like sizing me up, and I'm like, "You can come join us. You want to write?" I didn't know she was a leader, and she's like, "I'm good over here." And so later on, she was like, she said, "So many people come through and want to do an activity or a project, and I just was making sure that you had my ladies' interest at heart," yes. Which I love. And before long, she saw that, I was going to follow through and
be respectful.
And I was there to learn. And so we met every Tuesday and Thursday after school. The kids' parents would drive them and we'd bring a snack. We'd write and visit. And it was amazing. That first year, they had the same poetry partner throughout the whole event. So they grew really close. And so we then published our poems into a book and hosted a poetry reading at Opening Bell Coffee and sold our books and T-shirts and raised $6,000 for the shelter, but which was great.
Yes.
And it was great because I think the women also felt like they were contributing, not on the receiving end. Yes. And these beautiful friendships formed. Some are still very much intact. So, as a result of that, about midway through, we hosted a lunch for the ladies in the sisterhood at our school and invited them to come hang out with us for the day. And the kids, as they were planning the luncheon, they were like, "Well, I know what Miss Cynthia likes to eat because she told me she likes fried chicken, and I know that Miss Deborah played hopscotch at recess at school, so we should play hopscotch." And so they were planning because they knew each other, and it was beautiful. And so we planned this lunch, and then anyway, they would come to our show. Like we had an end of the year musical. Who was sitting in the front row? The ladies in the sisterhood. And when I know three, Miss Deborah and Cynthia and Roxanne, three of our friends moved into apartments, and we had housewarming parties for them. Oh, wow. And there's one sweet lady, Davette, who was at our 6th grade graduation this last year because her partners were graduating. And so
sweet.
What I forgot to tell you is like this started from a TED Talk about where the topic of, it was Frances Barclay's TED Talk about, I think it's called What I Learned Sitting Down, Seeking Common Ground. And so she would walk past the same people every day on her way to work. And she just decided one day she was going to sit down next to someone who was sitting on the streets and strike up a conversation and get to know them. And it was a talk about connecting with people experiencing homelessness in your community. And in that talk, she mentions that the biggest factor in determining whether one person becomes homeless or not is relational poverty, like no connections or a network of support. I mean, we all, if something tragic happened and our house is burned down or something, we all have people we could go to. Yes. And that's the thing that's different. And so one of my students asked, well, if relational poverty leads to those kind of circumstances that isolate someone, could we build relational wealth and turn that around? And I'm like, that's okay. A really great, I mean, goodness, they didn't say it in those words, but I was like, let's see how we, and that was kind of what sparked us even, along with watching it unfold at the shelter, that question is what we're like. And they are the ones who came up with, we had just hosted a poetry cafe for their parents. And so like, they're like, well, we know about poetry. We could work on poems together. They're the kind of the ones who came up with, we knew we wanted to do something creative. We knew we wanted to connect and spend time together with an effort to unify our communities. And it worked. Yeah. So, and then the next year it was a different group of women in the sisterhood, similar format, but we did a picture book for children based off of another thing we heard in a TED Talk, which was this Jewish creation myth about vessels of light. And I'm going to mess up the whole story, but there's something about when God created the earth, he was sending his holy light in these vessels, and it was too powerful for the vessels, and they shattered. And so these little sparks of holy light all over all of creation, and our job is to find those and put them back together, and that's kind of how the world will heal. And so we thought that was really cool, and my kids were like, we could write a story about that. And so we wrote, our book is called Shine, and they brainstormed all different kinds of lights, from like a night light to birthday candles to a disco ball or front porch lights or headlights on a car. And then we wrote about how could something about that kind of light be a metaphor about how we can shine our light, who God is to us. I mean, it was, and so then they did artwork with the ladies in the sisterhood for each page, and it turned out really pretty. The artwork was great, and we auctioned the artwork off. Oh, wow. And raised money. So that year we raised $10,000, and we gave half of it to the Laura Bush Foundation, because the floods had just happened in Houston, and a lot of school libraries were ruined. And so the sisterhood and my kids agreed they would give half of whatever they raised too. So we did half to the Austin Street and half to Laura Bush Foundation.
I love how they made that decision together too.
It's all so sweet. Yeah, and just, I don't know, all along the way, it's just this beautiful, like, growing community each year. Yes. Because the children lead, but the parents jump in because it's so beautiful. They want to become part of it too, and then they're bringing their gifts and talents, and it just turns into something really beautiful. So.
And that is a great segue to what we're talking about today primarily is the Our Common Table partnership. Yes. So you partnered with two organizations in 2018. So Cafe Momentum and Bonton Farms. So how did you choose those organizations, and how did that partnership go?
It was great. So I chose them really, I started pursuing them or wooing them a year before. Like, I followed both of their stories and love what they do. And I think that the reason those two organizations resonated with me is that they're doing exactly what I want to do. Like, they are somehow bringing a perfect cross-section of our community together to where people who would never normally probably interact. Like, the restaurant is a beautiful restaurant where people will go for a nice meal, and many of them maybe don't even know the story of the restaurant, and then they're meeting these amazing kids who are interns there, and then they're just want to help.
Yes.
The same with the farm. So Bonton Farm, they have service Saturdays. They have now the market. They have a Wednesday night Bible study, which is you go to that Bible study and you'll see like grandmothers from Highland Park and little kids from the neighborhood and everything in between coming together. And that's what I wanted my students to see up close, what that looks like for that we don't all have to live in our little silos.
Yes.
And it's actually so much better when we don't.
Exactly.
So I, reached out to them a year ahead of time. And the first person that kind of reached back was Tetta Babcock, Darren's wife. And she and I had coffee, and I shared the idea. And she said, oh, we've been wanting to do a cookbook anyway, to have some recipes. A lot of people who live in the neighborhood don't know what to do with arugula or whatever, and make kid-friendly recipes. So they had a need for a cookbook. And then I didn't know at that time that they were one of their produce was also used at Cafe Momentum. So they already had a relationship, but I didn't even know it. So then a little while later, Chad and Margaret Wyndham from Cafe Momentum met with me, which it is amazing how it all, because they're all so busy.
Yes.
But the fact that they heard a fourth grade teacher with a crazy idea and came and listened to me, and I showed a video. I was like Shark Tank. I was like, I wanted so bad. I'm like, please, And so they sat and they listened, and they, I think originally were nervous that it was going to be more labor intensive on their end. I don't think they realized we were going to do it all if they would just let us be in their presence.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And I hope that now looking back that I hope I could use them as a reference for the rest of my people, so that whatever projects we do in the future, but I think they would say that it turned out great.
Yes.
There were some times where I had, it was learning for me along the way, because they're doing such important work and they're so busy, and I did not want to ever take anything away from time or energy away from what they're doing. And so finding the balance, it has been a learning curve for me. But
and then at the end of it, which was, I think, worth it for them, you gave them, each organization, $10,000. And I think we have a picture of them giving a check.
Oh, yeah, there's a chicken.
Oh, yes.
This makes me so happy. Look at that. Oh, and there,
So many great photos.
There was the check. Yeah, that was, excuse me. That was just this fall. They came and we presented each organization with a check for $10,000. And by the way, this was such a group effort. This book in particular would not have been as beautiful as it was if it wasn't for some of the Wesley Prep parents. Amy and Aaron Opsel, who are their daughter Izzy was in my class, and they have a company called the Brand Hatchery. And so they're a branding company. And they did lessons with, first of all, they treated us like a client. And they came and did a kind of marketing 101 class with my students, taught them all that. We wrote elevator pitches, because they're like, if you're going to wear the T-shirt, you need to be able to articulate what you're doing. And we've kind of done that every year, but having them do it from their perspective as professionals in the industry was great. And they told us their process when they're kind of coming up with creative ideas for a client. They keep, for about 2 weeks, everybody's ideas go up in the same place. So we taped up I have a big giant window in my classroom, and we taped up everybody's ideas for a book title, a logo, recipes. For 2 weeks, just my window was filled. And then after that time period, we kind of narrowed down to our top 10 of each thing, sent it to the Brand Hatchery, and their team came up with 5 logos, brought them back to us, and we had a business meeting. And what's funny is my kids were like, on Wednesdays, they have to wear their blazers for chapel.
Okay.
So they're like, we need to have our business meetings on Wednesdays.
So we wore our blazers.
So we had a working lunch, and they wore their blazers, and they have those zipper binders that you can put, so they used this like their briefcase. They walked in, But, and then the brand hatchery brought the 5 options, and we voted on which option we liked. We discussed the pros and cons of each logo and did it really tell our story. And then we presented them also to Bonton and Cafe Momentum.
Yeah.
And that's how we came up with our cover.
Yes.
Which I really think turned out really cool.
So beautiful. I know I wasn't going to say I was going to stand this up, but it's stunning. And I love the black and white. I love the font and everything. So I just love that you collaborated with parents and students and the organizations. I just think that matters so much.
Yes. It became, when you make something beautiful with other people, it's a bond. Creativity is a bonding agent, I think. And so kind of another set of parents, the Freemans, have a printing company. So they were the ones who arranged for the printing, and they took their daughter with them to take pictures of, when they print for a book, it's like giant sheets of paper with all the pages on them. And so he brought one back for each of the kids, we got to know the whole process. So, beyond just the connecting with our community, my kids were learning about communication and and even just keeping up with the business end of it. When orders came in, there were so many just amazing aspects of this that are valuable for all of us. But so it was a huge team effort.
So what are you working on this year? Can you give us a little, sneak peek of what's happening this year?
So this year, on the big picture, and my hope would be that every year we get to know our neighbors, and we're building this ever-widening circle of common ground in our community. And so this year, I really wanted to connect with an organization that works with the refugee families that live in the Vickery Meadows neighborhood. And so we are partnering with Heart House. And Heart House is an amazing organization that works with students after school, and they do other things, but they have after-school programs for kids. And it's a trauma-informed care, kind of like they know that these kids have been through some unimaginable things already in their little lives. And so along with being like a tutor and a place to just do fun after-school activities, their staff members are, they have counselors, and they have people who will help address the trauma that they have experienced, which I love. So my 4th graders are working with kinder through 2nd graders from Heart House that are they have several different, campuses, and we're at the Wildflower campus, it's in an apartment complex. They kind of remodeled 2 apartments into a big classroom area, and they've done that in several places, because then when the kids come home from school, they don't have to worry about transportation to and from, which I think is great. And and then their parents can pick them up right from there. But most of the children that we're working with are from Burma. And but there's some they're in that neighborhood. It's like a little mini United Nations. We have neighbors from all over the world, and I think it's just a wealth of opportunity for us to get to know people and hear their stories. And so this year we're working with these kids, and we're writing an alphabet book with in each page we'll have, we've just started, we've kind of met 3 times so far, and we're already in love with these cute little people. But so we've brainstormed, we have like a big word bank of words for each letter, and then we're coming up with one, we're calling them heart words for each letter. Like for A might be authenticity, or G might be grit. Things you can carry with you on your life journey no matter where you go.
In your heart. I love it.
And so whatever the alphabet page will be, it might be about a giraffe named Gary who, was trying to get the green leaves, or, but he's going to have grit. So each page is going to whatever the story is. And so they'll work with partners, and we're in the writing phase right now. And we'll have a little Christmas celebration and do other things as well. But and then we'll collaborate on our illustrations again, and we'll probably have in the spring. We're hoping to have a launch, kind of a book launch dinner at the I think the there's a community center that Northwest.
Yes.
Is it Northwest Bible?
Northwest Community Center.
Something they've built, and so we'll probably have a dinner there in the spring, and people can come. And I'm hoping, even this is of course me brainstorming. Haven't really talked to anybody about this yet. You heard it here first. But I would love it if the other organizations that work with the Vickery community, like there are other organizations like the Vickery Trading Company, and there's Refugee Resources, several other. I was thinking it'd be cool if they were there at the dinner so people could come and learn and find out how they can plug in with these neighbors of ours, and so that's what we're doing this year. And my hope would be that people would start saying, oh, I wonder what the book is going to be next year, and who are we going to get to know. And so pipe dream, that's what we're doing, and that people can grow their collection of books about our neighbors and become more a united community. So,
well, what you're doing is so innovative and so precious, and I just am, and you inspire me, and I'm in awe of you that you are getting these young, fourth graders and just creating that community and that sense of humanity and that connection. Thank you. So, thank you for what you do. So, I want to end our conversation on one of the endings in our Common Table cookbook. It's a little beautiful image.
Gabby, oh my goodness.
Yeah, she's I love all the Cafe Momentum folks and Bonton Farms, but so you say at the end, we hope this story inspires you to create one of your own. Invite someone new to join you for dinner and enjoy the unscripted conversation that follows. Even better, prepare the meal together. We found that the time and care we invested in cooking created a natural connection. The food prepared became an outward expression of the nourishment this experience provided our souls. Gather round our common table. There's a seat for everyone.
It's true.
It's true. Lori, thank you so much. Oh, it's precious. And if you want to learn more, please visit www.kleinertfdn.org/ourcommontable, and we'll have all the links up to their information, their Facebook page, so you can keep up with them. And I think their Facebook is Our Common Ground Experiment now. Yes. But we'll have all those links, and you can look it up. So, yes, Lori, again, thank you so much. And we will have to have you back next year to talk about the new project.
Yes. Of course.
Well, thank you so much for listening, and have a wonderful day.
Thank you for joining us on another episode of The Road to Innovation, powered by the Kleinert Foundation. If you'd like to learn more about today's social innovator, please visit kleinertfdn.org or the podcast website at theroadtoinnovation.com.